You are speaking now. You are assembling a chain of concepts, linking them through words, forming a delicate network of meaning. It's a miraculous, beautiful thing. You might feel like you invented it. But what if you're wrong? What if the entire structure of human speech, the way you form sentences, the grammar, the sheer capacity to talk about things that aren't even here, was never meant for the voice box you have? It's a cognitive phantom limb, a gift so massive, it seems almost alien to the creatures that came before us. The true missing link isn't a bone or a single breakthrough. It's the moment the brain found a new way to think. When we think about language, we tend to picture a giant switch being flipped and suddenly, boom, words appear, a clear starting point. But the fossil record and the cognitive science doesn't show a sudden boom. It shows a gradual, deeply messy construction site, a series of necessary, almost accidental breakthroughs. We are going to trace the evidence backward. We're looking for the scaffolding, because to understand human language, we first have to understand what we were not. Our story, if we're going to look back 3 million years, starts with a shift in basic locomotion. Standing upright, bipedalism, is the single most critical evolutionary change. It freed our hands. Imagine the animal you're picturing. It moves on all fours. The hands are gripping, scrambling, pulling itself up a branch. They are essential for survival. Then the story changes. When we walk upright, those hands are suddenly free. And once you have free hands, your whole life trajectory changes. The hands become extensions of the brain. In the early fossil record, we see people like Australopithecus. They walked tall, yes, but their tools were rudimentary. They were scraping, simple. But as the journey continued and the needs grew, the need to butcher, to strip, to cut, the hands had to get better. The brain started building something incredibly complex, the ability to plan a sequence of actions. Suddenly, the hand was not just a tool. It was a record of abstract thought, and that ability, the ability to model the future using physical objects, that became the first echo of grammar. It's the physical proof that we were thinking in sequence. But a free hand is not enough. You can build a spectacular axe, but if you can't pass down how to build it, or why it was necessary, the knowledge fades. This brings us to the second prerequisite: cooperation, and crucially, shared intentionality. Shared intentionality is a concept that sounds like pure academic jargon, but it is the essence of the human group. It's the ability for you and the person next to you to be focused on the exact same objective simultaneously. Imagine a scenario. 2 members of a group are trying to open a tough root. One needs to strike, the other needs to pry. If they can coordinate their efforts, if they are both working towards a single known, difficult goal, something clicks. It's a kind of collective brainstorming. And that necessity, the need to coordinate complex, dangerous, joint efforts, is what puts pressure on the vocal system. The physical throat structures must adapt. The larynx must descend. To gain a wider range of vocal sounds, making a wider sound palette, the mouth itself had to change. But this change alone wasn't enough. It was just hardware. The software was still missing. This is where the story pivots. We have the free hands, we have the adapted vocal cords, we have the shared goals. So when did language become language? Was it the mouth? Was it the tools? Or was it the single ability that bridges physical action and pure abstraction? It was the development of symbols. Not just pointing, like a child pointing at a specific leaf, but the ability to use an object, a gesture, or a word to represent something that is conceptually absent. Think of it like a shared whiteboard. You don't need to be in the room with the mammoth to talk about the mammoth. You just need the word. This jump from pointing at a reality to pointing at a concept is the enormous barrier. It suggests that what powered human language was not the anatomy, but the sudden deep-seated ability for recursive thought, the ability to talk about talking, to look at a stone and not just see a tool, but to see the idea of a tool. Once that loop closes, when the brain figured out how to assign abstract meaning to a symbol, the growth didn't stop. It accelerated exponentially. Suddenly, human society became something entirely unique. We became the only species capable of cultural accumulation. A chimpanzee can learn to crack a nut. A human learns to crack a nut and how to build a better rock to crack the nut and how to pass on the optimal technique for that better rock, all while simultaneously debating the philosophical implications of nut consumption. Language is the mechanism for storing, sharing, and iterating knowledge across generations. It's the ultimate compression algorithm for survival. What started as a simple sound was quickly hijacked by everything, by mathematics, by law, by poetry, and by the collective narrative of who we are. The missing link then wasn't a biological trait, it was the invention of the story. Look at your hands now. They are flexible, articulate, capable of everything from typing this script to delicately drawing a diagram of your own brain. They are hands of creation, of analysis, of story. And look at your mouth. It sounds simple, a collection of vibrating air, but it is capable of building worlds out of sound. You realize that you are standing on the shoulders of an unimaginable cognitive accumulation. That your ability to form a single complex question is not just a personal gift, but a multi-million-year-old, highly improbable confluence of biology, social pressure, and abstract thought. The missing link wasn't a perfect jawbone. It was the moment the mind realized that the most powerful thing it could build wasn't a physical shelter or a bigger weapon, but a shared idea. And that idea, that story, is what still shapes us